Welcome to Cross-Border Tax Talks, where we discuss the latest trends in international taxation, from US tax reform to careers in international tax. I'm Doug McHoney, PwC's International Tax Services Global Leader. PwC's Pillar 2 engine, powered by Beacon, is a game changer for Pillar 2 modeling, provision, and compliance calculations. Built on a graph system utilizing over 20 years of international tax technology, this cloud-based centralized rules engine is developed by a team of Pillar 2 tax experts from around the globe. PwC's Pillar 2 engine is currently available as a service and is now available to license. On this week's episode of Cross-Border Tax Talks, we're in Washington, D.C. in PwC's Policy on Demand studio, where I'm excited to have Mike Urse and Calum Dewar back on the podcast. Neither of these guys needs an introduction on this podcast, but I'll give it a go. Mike is retiring this year after 42 years at PwC. Mike has held a number of leadership roles, including the International Tax Services Leader of the US, who I had the honor of succeeding. Calum is retiring after 38 years at both PwC UK and PwC in the US. Calum is a dedicated, trusted advisor who has successfully avoided most leadership positions throughout his career. Calum was the guest on my most downloaded podcast of all time. It's called Let's Make a Deal, What's Behind Pillar 2 from August of 2022, where he provides the best summary of the OECD model rules ever recorded, dare I say. Gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Doug.
For listeners that appreciate Mike, he still doesn't understand the difference between the vlog and the podcast. But Mike was on one of my very first vlogs. You were on the 100th episode of the podcast. I think we're at 190. And frankly, none of this podcast could have happened without, frankly, Mike, you and Calum. You've been a guest too many times to count, although I think Pat still has you beat.
Yeah.
But he's actually a willing participant on these podcasts. So I'm calling this series that I'm doing with a couple of some of our retiring partners and some others, Careers in Tax. And I'm hoping, guys, that we can help encourage more students to go into tax, and specifically international tax, because I know you guys have enjoyed your careers. I've certainly enjoyed mine. But Calum, maybe I'll ask you to start things off. What is your elevator pitch as to why somebody should go into international tax if they're a university student or whatever, thinking about changing their careers?
Well, I mean, I think certainly my experience has been, if you want a career that's constantly shifting, as countries just constantly change laws, and the challenge of dealing with that and advising clients on how to deal with that and deal with uncertainty, then international tax is all of that. I mean, it's challenging. It's never the same thing. There's always new issues, and it won't stop, I don't think. I mean, it's not like we're going to suddenly wake up one day and all the governments of the world have said, that's it, we've got our tax system completely right now. And, you know, even with things like Pillar 2, the reality is that the challenge for countries is always going to be, how do you have a stable tax system and encourage investment into your jurisdiction? And those two challenges sometimes are hard to coexist. So you'll see the pendulum swing between trying to attract investment and trying to close down tax loopholes. And I think that'll continue for decades.
And it has for decades, right? And it's certainly something that I enjoy. I mean, you obviously have to be willing to read and have to stay caught up. And I mean, I remember when Pillar 2 came out, and I think I told you this on one of the podcasts, like, I mean, I had to dust off my accounting textbook from undergrad because I frankly hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about deferred taxes. I mean, I'm just reread that. Fortunately, it was still relevant from 30 years ago. But if you've got a thirst for knowledge, it's a great career. Mike, what's your response to a potential student?
Well, to add to what Calum said, I mean, of course, the law is always changing, and that makes it more complicated. But if you think about international tax, we're talking about companies that are usually large, the deals are big dollars, and they're cross-border. So even if the law was the same in 80 countries, when someone buys a target that's European-based and it's operating in 100 countries, the deal work of advising a client of how to actually transact that deal is so complicated. You get to work with folks around the world, and it's just an exciting area to be in. So even without change, the complexity and the dollar size of the transactions makes it exciting for all members of the team to participate.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'll add that has nothing to do with really actually the technical aspects of what we do is, I mean, think of the number of countries that we've been to. I mean, collectively that I've been with you around the world. I mean, I remember backpacking, doing the backpacking experience. This was before iPhones. I had to carry this like folders book around to figure out where I was going to stay, staying at $5 a night hostels, which are as nice as a $5 a night hostel sounds. And I was like, oh, I want to travel the world and now as I reflect, over 26 years, not quite as long as you guys, like I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of places, and frankly, a number of those places with you, and that's a lot of fun. You obviously have to like the work, right? It's not like we get to travel the world.
Some of those places would be nice to go back to and actually see something other than a hotel and an office. But
that is true. That's sort of the appreciated is like many times like you fly to Europe for a day or 2 days. It's not a lot of time to frankly even get your body clock, let alone do any sightseeing. But
well, the other benefit is you build a network of friends all over the world. I mean, you've worked with these folks over a 30, 40-year career, and you really have so many friendships. It's an amazing experience.
It is. All right, so let's rewind back to Mike, I'm going to start with you, to the beginning of your career. What is your education background? And of course I know that you went to Ohio State, but you can remind everybody again. And what is your education background? How'd you get into international tax?
Well, for my Michigan fans, it's the Ohio State University. I went there undergrad in law.
Undergrad in accounting, right?
In accounting. I didn't want to be a litigator. So I came out of law school in Columbus and went straight to PW Cleveland. I wasn't in international. We didn't have an international group in 1984. I did a bunch of personal financial planning and estate planning, but the 86 Act came. So I'm one of the few remaining U.S. partners who has the bookend of 86 Act and TCJA.
It might be only. You're saying one of the few.
Maybe I can't remember if Deegan owns you, but anyway, the firm asked me in '86 if I wanted to go into this group they're forming called the International Tax, and I didn't know what it was, but I said sure.
Sounded interesting,
and
right?
it turned out to be a great choice.
Wow, so that was in 1986. I guess
right.
87 is when the practice kind of formally started.
When all the foreign tax credit baskets came out of the 86 Act.
All right. And so Calum, I would consider what Mike is sort of a traditional route, and I've got the same background, accounting undergrad, went to law school. The only difference is that I actually went to law school to be a litigator. I didn't really like accounting, and then ended up working for an accounting firm for 26 years. You have an entirely different educational background in the UK.
Right. I mean, the UK system's a little different. Big Four, or Big Eight as it was then, but. So I did a degree in politics at Edinburgh University, graduated in '87, and applied to Coopers and Lybrand because they were the ones paying a reasonable graduate salary. I say reasonable, it was £7,850 a year living in London.
What year was this?
87.
Okay.
So, but you joined the firm and then you did 3 years of exams to get qualified as an accountant, equivalent to CPA. And I randomly on the form to apply ticked the tax box. I had no idea why I ticked it. I still to this day have no idea why I ticked it. It just sounded better than audit, I think. So I joined the tax practice, had to do my accounting exams, did have to do some audit experience, and rapidly realized I was very glad I didn't join audit when I did the audit experience. Then qualified, and the original aim was to qualify as an accountant and then go and get another job. I mean, that was what an awful lot of people did in the Big Eight, but I never got round to leaving. And then sort of 3 years after that was when I came on my first secondment to the US, went back to London, and then came again on secondment, went back to London, and so that my links to the US were fairly on in my career.
Yeah, so I mean, when you after you qualified, or maybe even before you qualified at PwC UK, did they have an international tax practice, or how did you kind of get involved in some of the cross-border stuff?
No, that was more, we didn't really have an international tax team. We were split into big corporate and private clients more than subject matter. And the specialisms really never became as specialist as they are in the US. The UK tax system didn't really need detailed specialism at that level. So, but what I did end up doing just randomly was working for a couple of partners, one of whom was a US partner based in London, Richard McGuinness, who you've had on
Who's
the podcast.
been on the podcast, yeah.
And with John Mongan, who were crazy planning partners who wanted to help clients navigate cross-border investment, and I was working for them. Working for them is a very loose term. I was enslaved to them and brutally abused each day, but I made it through.
Those were different times,
Yeah.
for sure, as far as the relationships that I think that partners have with their staff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Richard was on sort of in a similar podcast with you guys talking about his career. We focus more on like how he acted, like the technological aspects and how those have changed, but we're going to come back to that. So Mike, I'm going to come to you. So you are the US International Tax Services leader for 7 years and are loved by the partners and professionals who work on your team. Most of them, right, Calum? How would you describe, Mike, your leadership style, and what are important attributes you're looking for in future leaders and those that are starting their careers?
Well, I think it's important to really get the opinions of the partners on various matters. So it was not an autocratic type of style. I led many of those years with Tim Anson, and we really got a lot of feedback from people about how we ran the practice, what we should invest in, which markets were most important, what are clients really interested in seeing from us. And teaming is such an important thing to be able to deliver the best service to our client base. And so we also really reached out to the other specialties like M&A and transfer pricing and state, and closely working with the lead tax partners as well, just so that we could bring a really full experienced team to our engagements. So I think, and as far as what I look for.
Maybe before you go there, let me just, because I want to add to that, because I like the way I would describe it, Mike, is you're a consensus builder. I think you're absolutely a consensus builder. And that, first of all, just in our partnership structure, the way our, just kind of the legal organization of the structure, it's very important. But I don't think that's unique to, public accounting firms or even law firms. Like, you are always very gifted at seeking consensus, getting people's input, not always listening to them, but at least understanding, and not just within our practice, within other practices. And that's certainly something that I've learned from you, and I just think is a very good attribute as a leader and a leadership style, is trying to build consensus, because it's a lot easier to get people to believe in what they're doing than to tell them what to do.
And then a lot of people have a lot of good ideas. I mean, there's a lot of smart people at this firm, and so, not everybody had the right idea, but oftentimes you could come to a common ground that made sense. But I think you wanted to know.
Yeah, what about future leaders? So somebody who's just starting their career, what are some of the attributes that you're
Again,
looking for?
it's an ability to develop teams and people, and understanding how to team within the firm so that you can basically have a practice that's, fully able to do all the things that our clients need. And so you can't look inward too much. You have to be able to work with other leaders, and you have to just be able to inspire the folks in your business unit to be the best that they can be. I mean, our folks are very smart and talented, but it's not that difficult to try to really invigorate them and get them to really love to do what they're doing.
Right.
And that's part of being a leader.
It's inspire, you have to inspire, right? And
Totally.
and it's very important to get people excited about what they do. And the example that I used to give is, I remember when I was an intern, before I even started at PwC, somebody wanted me to, effectively photocopy all these legal documents. And I was like, this is why I went to law school, to make a bunch of Xeroxes of, but the way this manager at the time was like, these are very important documents. This is the deal that's going on. This is why we need to have this done before tomorrow. Told the story, and I was like, all right. And I was still standing at a photocopier for 4.5 hours, but at least it inspired me. All right, so Calum, About halfway through your career, you decided to move from London to New York, to go from being a UK tax partner to a US tax partner. And you had said that you had kind of moved back and forth with a number of secondments. But I do want to point out to listeners that maybe when you started, the UK international tax system was not that complex, but obviously throughout your entire career, that system got significantly more complex. And then I would posit to say, albeit I'm a bit biased, that the US international tax system is the most complex. And so you're a partner in the UK firm and you're like, I'm going to move to the US and effectively learn the entire US international tax area. And I remember that time, you probably weren't as crisp on expense apportionment, for example. I mean, but you learned all of that stuff. I mean, tell us about that experience, because I think a lot of people, even earlier in their careers, are thinking about making a change. And I mean, I very much admire. It was a big jump for you to be like, all right, I've done this for 10 or 15 years, and now I'm going to come over and effectively try to compete, or at least be at the same level of those that have been doing this their whole careers.
Well, I think, so to your point, I had come on 2-3 year secondments to the US, so I'd been fairly immersed in the tax system in those secondments. And then the last few years I was in London, Mike will remember, I was coming over to the US like once a month for meetings. So I was pretty entrenched in the US before I actually made the decision to move here. The move here was mainly driven by just professional curiosity. I mean, the UK market had dried up a bit. They'd simplified some of the UK international provisions, so there was less for companies to deal with. That made it a little less exciting. The market wasn't that big, and there were two players in PwC London, two partners who were senior to me, who owned much of the UK outbound market, rightly so. So I was largely focused on inbound into the UK from the US for a long period of time, and it was kind of natural progression to say, well, rather than just advise on the UK side, why not get involved in advising on the US side? So it was largely that. I mean, in terms of the challenge, George Forster used to say I was uniquely qualified to do the European stuff when I was in the US. And I said, George, do they teach reading in American schools? That's the only qualification I've got. I just read a lot. And, in the first days when I was over here, when I was in a meeting and someone said something, I'd try to write down the code section or the reg they referred to, and I'd go away and try and read it afterwards just to make sure I would grasp it. But the other thing is, to a degree, I faked it till I made it. You have to have a degree of confidence that you can say something in a meeting, and if it's not quite right, you'll work it out afterwards.
There's no magic to learning this stuff, right? You just have to read.
You have to read
the rules
and ask questions.
Yeah,
and that's the reality. And don't think any question is a stupid question.
Right. I like this. The only stupid question is the one not asked.
Right.
So the next thing I wanted to move to was mentors, and so maybe I'll stick with you. Like, who are you? Already mentioned Richard and John, but who are some of your mentors? How did they play a role? And a lot of people are uncomfortable asking questions because they're afraid to admit what they don't know. And you came over as a tenured professional and partner. Who were those mentors, and how did you deal with that?
Well, Richard and John were definitely my mentors. They shaped my career in the early days. The other person was Barry Marshall, who ended up running the UK tax practice, but was my sponsor and partner when I made partner. He was the guy who told me I couldn't write an email to a partner in the year before I made partner, in the fear that I might offend somebody. So he had to read all my emails.
Seems like good advice, knowing you.
He was a pretty good mentor that way. So they really shaped my career. In terms of in the US, I've worked with a lot of talented US partners around the country. I'm not sure any of them been mentors per se. Because I was quite old by the time I came here. It's a different thing. But obviously Mike and Tim were pretty, apart from their attention deficit disorder, you could ask them a question, but you may not get an answer because they've gone off somewhere else. But they were very helpful in shaping me coming over and getting integrated, etc. And then around the country, just a bunch of smart people, really smart people.
Yeah. It's a great pool of resources that we have to be able to, particularly as you're diving into and learning new areas. Yeah. Mike, talk about your experience with mentors and how they've played a role in your development.
I had a lot of them, and in 4 decades, it started in the 80s when the Cleveland partners were mentors and got me into international, and even when I came back from my tour of duty in New York in the early 90s, Julian Buck was the a lead tax partner in Cleveland who really pulled me into a lot of things and gave me a lot of opportunity. And then I made partner. So they were helpful. In New York, it was Tom Moore and George Forster who kind of took me under their wing and really gave me an opportunity to show them what I could do. I'd say two other folks I have to mention, and first was Frank Gaudio. He really taught me how our firm works, the business of PwC, and how to think and about the business itself. But he also kind of taught me how important it was to understand and know the partners. And he did a great job of going around the country and knowing the partners. And so when I became the US leader, I made it a point to try to get to know every international partner. It's so important. And last is George Forster. He kind of taught me about how not to focus solely on the firm itself, but to really think like a client and get up in the morning and say, well, what does this big company really think about or care about today, as opposed to whether I'm having an internal meeting or something. So he made me, keep an outward focus.
Well, both of you two have been huge mentors to me. The way you described Frank, Mike, I would describe you. Like, you really helped me, and that's what I really enjoyed sort of about the career. I love the technical stuff, and Calum, you've been such a mentor, particularly on the non-US stuff. You have a wealth of knowledge on European and just global tax systems. I also respect your judgment immensely as I've been in leadership roles. I hope you enjoyed the intro where you've been able to avoid those leadership roles. But
largely.
I said mostly, have been able to avoid those and have provided a lot of sage wisdom. And then Mike, working with you, like understanding the business of what we do, in addition to client relationships and all the technical stuff. And that's what I really enjoy now, particularly at this point in my career, is that I can do some of the technical stuff, and then I can deal with the technology stuff, and then you can deal with the people stuff. And there's just a lot of different things that you can do depending what your interests are. And
exactly.
And I think looking at your two careers, similar but very different in what you guys have chosen to do within a large organization. So Calum, back to you. How has technology changed over the course of your career? Because I know, like, if we do have any young people listening to this, I mean, 40 years is like not that long. 4 decades. I appreciate you're a little shy of that, but how technology has transformed, even in my 26-year career. But what was it like?
Well, I mean, so when I joined the firm, obviously there was no cell phones. There wasn't even an answer phone system. There wasn't voicemail in the UK.
Computers?
No computers.
Okay.
If I wanted a letter to go to a client, I had to either handwrite it or dictate it into a dictaphone and take it to the most fearsome place in the world, which was the typing pool.
Okay.
Staffed by dragons. Or they seemed like that to us.
They were so scary.
They were so scary, and you had to be so nice to them, because otherwise the letter would never come out. You'd go to the bottom of the list and you'd have the partner shouting at you. If you made an error in that was hellish. A box of chocolates every month was bought just to make sure you stayed in the good books. So that was what it was like to begin with. I mean, it changed fairly rapidly. I mean, I think my second year, we got the first portable computer to take out to do tax provisions.
Okay.
Portable was a very loose phrase. I mean, I looked beaten by the time I got to the client. This thing was so heavy, but it did work. We did do the provision there. And then obviously over time. But I mean, at the time, faxes were the means of international communication.
Right, that's what Richard described. That's how you would get your advice from
and you get a fax,
colleagues.
and you had to read it damn quickly, because that fax faded quickly as well. So you better read it pretty quickly. And then, over time, obviously, computers started coming in. But I mean, originally, obviously, if you went on a 2-week holiday, you were on a 2-week holiday. No one could get hold of you. I mean, there was no way to get hold of you at all. It was very different than it is now. And in some ways, that is not a good development. I think the fact you could take a break, and you really could take a break, was pretty important. I think in today's world, it's hard to let go. You're 24/7, 365 days a year. People can get hold of you, and it's hard to have the discipline to ignore your email. So it was a very different time.
Yeah, when I started in '99, so we obviously had laptops at that point. We
Yeah.
had gotten like the cell phone, but it was the old flip
Right.
phone. I mean, it wasn't until the early 2000s that when Blackberries came out.
Right.
That was just like so
I
revolutionary.
mean, BlackBerry came out when I was on secondment to the US in 2002. So I
Okay.
got one. I remember getting one and being amazing.
You were always you and I have always been early adopters on some of this
my bank account
technology.
reflects that, the amount of money I've wasted on
Oh,
electronic gadgets.
I got a big box of old items. All right, Mike, so I'm going to bring the technology conversation over to you. What would you tell people who are considering international tax as a profession and the role technology will have in their careers? And maybe just as I should have prefaced that, I wouldn't necessarily say, and I mean this with all due respect, that you were the most technologically advanced of our partners, but you always recognized the importance of it. And I think you saw very early on kind of the need that we had, particularly in international tax, to develop technology.
I mean, to be fair, he was, of the twin leaders of Tim and Mike, he was by far and away the lead technologist of those two.
That's fair.
This is why you need to build consensus, because sometimes you don't have any skills
Exactly.
in a particular area.
So, I mean, we hear a lot about AI and it's going to, destroy all these, the professional careers. And I don't buy that. We need expertise, right? And expertise is something that humans have, and, machines can certainly be trained. But, what is your advice, or what would you say to people as far as you look at kind of the future of technology and the role that could play to somebody who's starting their career?
Well, I'll start with the actual work we do. I mean, what we do in international tax is complicated. It's cross-border, it's many countries often, and it's changing law, as Calum said. So when you think about what we have to deliver in an engagement, there's so much that you have to do as a human that will never be completely replaced by AI. AI will be a tool that will facilitate delivery of engagements, but it's certainly going to be critical that we have the right technology for compliance. Our US international tax system is so complicated with the foreign tax credit and GILTI and FDII and whatever changes are coming with this 2025 bill. So having a tool like Beacon, which can help us with compliance and provision and planning, is certainly very important. But knowing where we're going with AI, there's going to be so many more tools that will help us do things more efficiently, like write tax opinions or do research or determine, maybe there's this path to achieve an acquisition that's more efficient than another path, and AI might help us do that. So I just think it's going to be a very interesting and challenging time, because as more technology is developed, our staff will just learn it, adopt it, and integrate it as they deliver engagements.
And we've seen that. That's why kind of this is the follow-up question, the technology, like we've seen this, right? Like,
Exactly.
I mean, think about how it's changed, where, we used to carry around the code and, sections of the regulations. Mike, I remember you carried. And
he carries his iPad.
And Calum's got his iPad with pretty much like
looks
every
at every
law
reg.
and rule organized incredibly neatly so that he can access it.
That'll be deleted on Monday. Just so
Yeah,
you know.
I'm sure. But I mean, just like like back in the day, the volumes of information that you now have access to. But the important point that I want for particularly young people, this is such a dynamic area, and with new laws constantly coming out, we're constantly going to need human beings to be able to effectively process, understand. AI models need to be trained. And so my recommendation when I'm talking in front of students and some of the professors is that technology needs to be more integrated as part of the educational process. Like you need to know more than Excel, for example, if you're coming into the Big Four. But I just view it as creating, frankly, more opportunities, and just how we work is going to be different. Or how maybe the future generation is going to work differently than we do. But I mean, look at the way you guys started working without computers, and you've adopted pretty well.
Right. I mean, I think the challenge for our partners in the next few years is, following up from the COVID and people not being in the office so much, and AI potentially being another reason people say we don't have to come to the office to learn things. You can just look it up on AI. I think there's a real challenge there to make sure that we do get people interacting, not just using AI, because I just don't think it's not going to work.
Agreed.
And people don't learn that way, I don't think. And so if you're coming into it and someone asks you to do something, to go away blindly and just tap it into AI and say there's the answer, I think that would be a disservice to yourself. I think doing a bit of research first, use AI to help, that's fine, but I don't think it should be press a button and it's all done.
Yeah, high-performing teams need to team, right?
And collaborate.
And collaborate. And Mike, you talked about sort of your leadership style as you described it, which I agree, consensus building. That requires teaming. And I do share that concern, particularly kind of with what happened with COVID and then with technology. But it doesn't matter where technology ends up. High-performing teams, whether you're in industry, whether you're in public accounting, a law firm, and a government, it doesn't matter. Like being a part of a high-performing team is important, and that starts with relationships.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe in one or two words, Mike, I'll start with you. What did you enjoy most, and not that you can do anything in one or two words, but what did you enjoy most about your career?
Our people, clearly. I mean, just working with so many smart people here in the U.S., at clients, and around the world. It was really just such a joyride.
Calum? You can give the same answer. Or...
Some of our people. How about that? No, I mean, obviously, the people, the friendships I've made through PW. I mean, there's this theory that I'm a grumpy individual. I've actually enjoyed my time at PwC. Imagine what I'd have been like if I hadn't been enjoying myself.
Theory?
I can't.
So, yeah, I mean, it's the fun, it's the people, it's the friendships you made, I think.
All right, so Calum, I'm going to stick with you. Why have you enjoyed working with Mike, and what are his best attributes?
Isn't the question, have you enjoyed working with Mike?
Okay, have you enjoyed working with Mike?
Yeah, mostly.
Aren't you supposed to look at me?
Mostly. His best attributes, smart guy. Somewhat annoying with his attention deficit disorder, especially when he's your boss and you're trying to get him to actually agree to something. But I think going back to what he said about his leadership style, I mean, he invested, I could see it all every day, he invested in knowing everything about his partners. And that didn't just mean work stuff, that meant stuff outside work, so that he knew if someone was facing a personal challenge outside of work, whatever that was, he knew and would always care about it. And I think that shone through for me in Mike. I mean, yeah, he was good technically, sometimes, definitely not on inbound.
He does know stewardship, apportionment.
He does know that very well.
Anybody else in the world.
Yeah, but I think the fact he cares so much, that's what I've enjoyed, and we've had a lot of laughs.
Well, what do you say about this guy, Mike?
Calum, what's it like working with Calum? Calum is one of the most intelligent people I've ever worked with, and so I learned a lot from him. Once you get past his grumpy exterior, he's soft as pudding in the middle, a very caring guy and dad. Tim and I relied on Calum as a consigliere. We went to him and leaned on him for advice and counsel on a number of topics, because he's just got such a good business acumen. He just, and his European knowledge and global kind of perspective helped us to understand things better and I think make better decisions. So, obviously Calum and I have gone through a lot together. I helped bring him here. He's been tremendously accretive to the U.S. practice, but having him as a friend is my greatest thing that I like about him.
Well, I agree with both of those, and I hope that people that are considering a career in this area understand how much fun you guys have had together, how much fun I've had with you, and I will tell you, but you have both been amazing mentors to me. I've learned so much from both of you. I frankly am not sure how I'm going to continue without having talking to you. I mean, I talk to you guys almost on a
call us. We'll be
daily
around.
basis. Yeah, Mike,
We'll have nothing else to do.
you guys have nothing else. But I want you guys to enjoy your retirements. But I want to thank you on behalf of myself, and then there is a whole generation of partners and teams that you have so much influenced, around the globe. Calum, both in the UK and really around our entire network, and Mike in the US as well as globally. You're going to be incredibly missed. This has been such a fun ride with you guys. I don't know why anybody would want to do anything other than international tax. It's challenging, it's fun, there's team building. It's a incredibly rewarding and dynamic career, and mine is better because of both of you. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Doug.
Pleasure.
So thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Cross-Border Tax Talks. Thank you so much to Mike Urse and Calum Dewar, retiring PwC International Tax Partner legends. I'm Doug McHoney, PwC's International Tax Services Global Leader. Stay tuned for another exciting edition of the Cross-Border Tax Talks podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by PwC, all rights reserved. PwC refers to the U.S. member firm or one of its subsidiaries or affiliates and may sometimes refer to the PwC network. Each member firm is a separate legal entity. Please see www.pwc.com/structure for further details. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be used as a substitute for consultation with professional advisors.